All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Chris Petrie, and welcome to Watercolor in 5, and we're going to have a little bit of interesting fun here. We're going to talk about tonal values and the importance of tonal values in your paintings as a watercolor artist, and we're just going to have a few things we're going to use for our materials and our art supplies. Here we're just going to have a simple brush, and we have some water and a water pail and a pencil, just a regular office pencil. And a couple of rulers. You can use rulers if you want. Rules are really fun. I use rulers sometimes in paintings. I used to use them all the time, drawing architecture and things when I was younger. And I still use the rulers occasionally. Sometimes I use them at work. And here we're going to talk about tonal values. Now, on my regular channel, which I make a video usually always once a week, and that's Chris Petrie. If you type that into YouTube, you'll see I make one video every week, and I basically cover a painting a week, and we just cover everything A to Z. The whole enchilada, how to draw, how to paint, understanding all the techniques that go into it. Here on this channel, Watercolor in 5, I'm just basically trying to cover a little more details on what I do on a normal weekly basis on my other channel, my main channel. I've had my main channel for about 4 years now on YouTube, and I've been painting watercolors about 15 years. So let's get right into it here. And what we'll do is, if you want, you can use a ruler. You can create some swatches with rulers. This ruler here I broke in half to make it more easy to work with. This is a nice ruler here too. This is like an aluminum ruler. Maybe we'll use this. We'll just do a quick little couple things here. And we'll call this tonal values. And we'll just, you'll hear me say this all the time on my regular channel, and you'll hear me mention it here all the time. Tonal values. And to keep it real simple, it's basically, your light and dark in your paintings. So tonal values are your light and your darks. And it's good to maybe jot this down because it's really important. This is one of the main fundamental building blocks in painting watercolor, or even if you're painting acrylics or oils. You'll always hear teachers say, that tonal values are critical if you're doing more of a realistic approach to things. I like abstract too, so if you paint abstract, you don't have to worry about it. This might not be that important, but it's still good to know anyway. As an artist, you're the artist. Does that make sense? It's always good to have extra information just in case you're going to maybe have someone ask you to do a painting for them and they want it more in a realistic fashion, let's say. Well, then you kind of understand, all right, tonal values are important when we're doing more realism. But if you're doing abstract work too, you might not need so much of, keying in on tonal values. But let's continue on here. So with tonal values, all we want to do is just really remember in a real simple way. And this is the way we do it. I want everyone to do this. You can do this with a ruler. We'll try a few with a ruler. We'll make some swatches. So I'm going to do this here. I make 2 lines. And then let's use the ruler this way. 1. And we'll just make like 4 boxes. 1. And we'll leave a little space in between each one here. So that's 1, 2. A little space, then the larger box. 2. Another space like that. And there, 4. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. And then we can even outline it, just so it's kind of, we could see here. So now we could take a magic marker or a pencil and just kind of outline it a little darker. And we're going to make just 4 swatches. And this is going to be our tonal values swatches. And then what we'll do is we're going to take these 4 and we're just going to use our darkest darks we have in our palette. That is really, since we're going to do this first swatch here, set of swatches here, in black and white, we're just going to go with our black. And that's ivory black and Payne's gray. And we'll start with the dark over here. And that's our darkest dark. Pure pigment, straight pigment, no water, practically no water. Now, we'll take those same colors and we'll put a little bit on the palette. And you can see it's a little lighter now. I added a little more water, less paint. And we'll just add this in here. There we go. That's all we have to do. So let's do this. Let's make sure we're doing this. Have a little fun, splash. Then we will we'll do our third one here. And I'm just using some water and a water bucket here. Clean water, fresh clean water. And we have our third, and this one we're going to leave white. So let's just say we have, right now, for simplicity, we have 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you don't have to number them. I just number them. But let's say here, the one on the right, the number 4 is super dark. It's the darkest dark we can have. And then we go lighter and lighter until we have white paper. You can expand this out and maybe make it 8 wide. And not to confuse things any, but you can just make it more gradual. You can see how I sort of went from a really, really super dark to almost like a medium tone. I could have stretched this out more and made more increments. But just for simplicity, let's stick with tonal values, lights and darks in our painting. You're going to have lights and darks in your painting, and you're going to want to accurately capture them. How are we going to do that when we start working with colors? Black and white, it's a little easier, right? Does that make sense? It's easier if you're using a black and white photograph to see the blacks and the darks and the lights. But once you start using your paints, that's a little more challenging. So that's why I'm going to expand this out. We're going to make some more here, just to give you the idea, the basics to start with, and then you can keep working on these, keep doing these. Get yourself some nice watercolor paper, and you have some fun, and you make these little swatches, and you practice your painting too at the same time while you're learning the real technical aspect of watercolor, which is really, really important. So let's go even one more here. So I just made another number of rows, and you can use a ruler if you want to keep them more accurate. Now let's take a look and see how we can make some darks with our paints. So you can take your palette, whatever palette you're using, or if you use my colors, Watercolor in 5, my new watercolor channel, which you're watching now, you'll see that I have a number of videos already stockpiled in this channel, and you can go back and look and you'll see all my colors in my palette, what I use, the names of the colors, how I put them in my palette, how I keep my palette neat and organized and keep the paints fresh and soft and moist. You have to have soft and moist paints like this. That's critical when you're doing watercolor painting and you want to have accurate, good-looking paintings and have really, beautiful paintings. You have to have fresh, moist paint with fresh, and I show you on my other videos how to do that, so you can go back and check those out. So now, if we want to get a super dark, like over on this here, we have to use our darks here. Does that make sense? So French ultramarine blue is pretty dark, and if we add a little bit of burnt umber to that, look at that. Wow, that's our dark. That's what we need. And look at that. It matches our tonal value chart up here. Perfect. And what helps too, if you squint your eyes a little bit, sometimes if you look at your subject matter and you squint your eyes, or you maybe squint one eye or both eyes at the same time, you'll see lights and darks better. So you'll see in your scene that you're painting, or your photograph, or whatever you're working from, outdoors if you're painting, or you're working from a laptop or a photograph, whatever it is, if you squint your eyes a little bit, you'll see the darks and lights better. So here we're looking across this scale of tonal values, and we see this is the darkest dark. So now if we went in here and we tried to use a red, that doesn't work. If you squint your eyes a little bit, you're going to notice that this red does not match the darkness of these two swatches that we just figured out. So we just figured out how to get a dark, and that's the dark right there. French ultramarine blue and burnt umber, that's a dark. You can get a beautiful, rich dark. But if we just went in and got some red, that's not going to do it. So we kind of can see there, okay, we know if we went in and got some cadmium red, that's not going to make a really rich dark like this. But we could add something to we could add maybe some purple, mineral violet. Now if we add mineral violet to that red, we can get close to that. And we could even lift up and say, all right, let's just lift up some paint with our tissue like that. And we'll take some red and mix it with mineral violet. Yeah, we can get a really pretty dark. Yeah, that's real close. So that's good. So you can mix colors in your palette too to get darks. So that's another fun thing to learn. Another really beautiful, rich color, Prussian blue. Look at that. Ooh, look at that, how beautiful that is. And that'll give you a really beautiful, rich, dark Prussian blue, all, just on its own. Pretty much like French ultramarine blue, but it's a little darker. You can see in the palette here how Prussian blue is darker than French ultramarine. So you can see that. And let's see, let's try to get this. Okay, cobalt blue, straight out of the tube. And that looks like it works. That looks about the same. If you squint your eyes, you'll notice straight cobalt blue out of the tube will give us this dark tonal value here. What else might do that? I would say, yeah, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, straight out of the tube. Yeah, that'll work. Maybe we might have to add a little mineral violet to that, purple, to get this. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It might even be a little dark. Might have to lift up a little bit there. Okay, let's see, can we get a... No, this is not. See, now if we went in and got straight yellow ochre, and we try to do yellow ochre and get a dark like this, that's not going to work. You can kind of see how that's a little lighter if you squint your eyes. Can you see that? If you squint your eyes, you'll see that it's not quite that dark. We need to add something to that, so we could lift up a little bit of paint with some tissue. Maybe we add some raw sienna to that. And that looks good. So we added a little raw sienna, which is a little darker than the yellow ochre. And we achieved our tonal value there, which is a little darker, but not quite as dark as the darkest dark. Now, as we work into this tonal value, we're pretty much home free. We can do we could take raw umber. That pretty much that works for that. And we could take cadmium red, and we add just a little bit of water. And we can see that's pretty much close to. If we squint our eyes, it might be a little, if it dries, it'll look close. And we can use some green, viridian green, sap green. So you can see how once you get into these lighter tones, you can use most all of your colors. You just have to adjust by adding water, more water or less water. And does that make sense? Once you get into your lighter tonal values, and this is white paper, so obviously we don't put anything in here in this row because we're saying this is the whitest white, the lightest light, that's white paper. When working in watercolors, we leave white paper. That's the lightest light. That might represent the bright sunlight or something that's painted white in your painting. Whatever it is, we don't put anything in that. And then on all of these other swatches, we're trying to match the top row, which is our dark and lights, our tonal values. So I hope that makes sense. And we'll just keep going here, and some cerulean blue. And you can see how that matches pretty much up with this row here. And when these dry, they dry lighter. Watercolors always dry lighter. So you always have to remember that too. You always want to paint a little bit darker because it's going to lighten up once it dries. But that's pretty close to the tonal values that we have up here. Does that make sense? If we want to create realistic paintings, we always want to keep in mind that tonal values are absolutely critical. And when you're doing that and you're painting in your painting, you're always going to say to yourself, what colors can I get that are going to create a dark dark? So you know, if you want to create one of your darkest darks in your paintings, you're going to really look at your palette and see what are the darkest darks here. And you can kind of see which ones they are. Like our darkest darks here are definitely French ultramarine blue. This is, ivory black, Payne's gray, Prussian blue, French ultramarine blue, burnt umber's very dark, mineral violet's very dark. So then once you're in cobalt blue is sort of getting to the lighter, you can kind of see cobalt blue is lighter, quite a bit lighter than the French ultramarine blue. I hope this makes sense. So yeah, always remember that when you're getting your lights and darks in your painting, you have to remember that you're going to have to use certain colors to get your darks. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get that really beautiful, rich, dark colors that you want in your paintings. And you can mix and match these colors too, so you don't have to worry. You can always mix and match things. You can say, well, I need a really, really, really dark. Let me use a Prussian blue, French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and you can mix them and match. You can mix and mingle them. And that's mineral violet, purple color, and black. You can use some black, Payne's gray, and so there you see that you can mix and match your darks to give them excitement. So if you need a dark, hey, don't be afraid. Use all your darkest darks and be familiar with them. And you always remember that if you want a really, really dark color, you can mix other colors into it. But you will have to go into your darker colors, as we said, that we were looking at. All right, everyone, hope you had fun here. Practice these, draw out your swatches. Practice swatches a lot. They're really helpful, and they help you learn to paint, too. All right, everyone, we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.